let's talk about living life in purpose.
I think we may have scared a few people away, so come back.
My creepy voice. No, but like living life in purpose. I think that.
Well, even just the word purpose is what I'm talking about. People get anxious around that.
Right. Because we know how to be doers in our life. Or here's the title. Here is the job description.
Yep.
Here's what your paycheck says that you do. Here's what your business card says that you do. And does your doing actually align with what you came to this planet to do?
Right. And what you love.
Right. Yeah. Minor detail.
Right.
Do you actually like the way you spend your days?
Yeah.
And granted, I want to go into this conversation saying it's not going to be all unicorns and rainbows because like that's not how life works. But what I do want to say is like, it's also not supposed to be a bunch of monotony and expectation, right? Like, well, I'm the mom, so this is how I'm supposed to do. Or, oh, I'm married, so this is what I'm supposed to do. Oh, I, am in college. Or, oh, I am, the bus driver. Or, like, I'm the nurse. Like, whatever your job title or your title within your life, like, that's not the entirety of who you are.
Not at all. And that is exactly what we have to talk about today.
Yeah, so let's talk about that.
Today's podcast episode is going to be around, we are all about questions here. So today's episode is going to be around what does it look like and what does it feel like to be in your purpose? And that's the piece that I was saying might scare some people because the simple question of who am I isn't so easily answered, right? But what do you do for a living? Oh, that's easy, right? That's like scripted out to say to a person, and it's comfortable to say. The question of who am I, you might have been avoiding that one for a little while. A lot of people, you know what I mean? It's very, it can be deep, right? But when you are in your purpose, that's just as easy to say as what your 9-to-5 job is.
Right.
So I think that topic of conversation today, like whether you've thought about it before or not, like let's talk about purpose. Why are you here? And no matter what belief system you carry, there's questions you can ask yourself that answers will, you can develop around why you're here.
Right. One of my favorite assignments that I give clients, and I do it a lot, is I invite them to ask 3 to 5, sometimes even like, depending on how much convincing they need, like 10 or 15 people, like, what are my biggest strengths? Right. And first of all, just putting yourself out there to ask it is an intimate question because more often than not, as people, we are wired to be excited to be like, I want to compliment you. But for me to say, hey, Cayla, like, what do you see as my greatest strengths? A lot of people will really shy away from that. So that's actually like the first part of the exercise. And then for them to get that feedback, I love that coaching session after they've done that homework assignment.
Yeah, they feel like they're on top of the world.
They feel like they're on top of the world, but it's also awesome because they say, like, of this list, what did you already know? What did you think was true? And what do you think is complete bullshit? Because a lot of times we have this version of ourselves in our mind, and it's not actually how we're seen by others. Now, this is going with, like, the fine print that other people's opinions of you don't matter as much as what your opinion is of yourself. But I like the exercise because many times people say like, oh, you're such a light, or, oh, I feel so comfortable talking to you, or, oh, you really help to empower me. And people don't necessarily see themselves that way. And I think it's kind of just like that opportunity because we don't live on an island, right? We are all living in collective society. And it's an opportunity to kind of get some feedback. Because when you're stuck in like, I don't know how to answer that question about who am I or what's my purpose, like let's make it a little bit more malleable. Let's actually be able to start to really contemplate and open up what our ideas are around our purpose.
Yeah, and these questions are, and I've got a question that I also have posed to clients as well around this topic too. And, we've got questions for you to personally answer yourself. So head to our show notes and just click for our free journal prompts. But the questions that you then pose to other people are important because the environment that you're surrounding yourself with can really play a big role in the lifestyle that you live. And so the question that I have always used, and this, helps people go back to a time when they weren't so worried about what other people thought. They were almost fearless. They had this broad imagination, right? And the question I would have them pose to at least 3 family members was, tell me about one of your favorite memories of me from before I was 10 years old.
I was going to say, you're talking about a 5-year-old.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
But the reason I have them do that is because when you're that age, you did not come onto this earth. You came onto this earth, and no one told you what Barbies to play with, what toys to like, right?
You were inventing yourself.
Exactly. And it was, you innately came here with some things you liked and some things you didn't like, some food you enjoyed and some things you didn't want to eat, right? Mm-hmm. We come with this discernment from, 1, 2, 3 years old. As we're developing, we're inventing ourselves. And as we get older, I like to say, and society gets to us, right? We almost seem to lose that. So the question that I have always had my clients and even family members who have, conversations with me around this is ask 3 or 4 other people to tell you about their favorite memory of you when, before you were 10 years old. And the stories, right? Just listening to other people tell you about yourself when you were a kid is it's exciting to hear about that version of you. But in doing that, you almost want to read it back, think about it back, and replay these memories and say, how would I describe that version of me? So one of the memories, I've done, if I'm going to, preach this, I'm going to practice this. So I've done this exercise with a couple of my family members. And at this point, I was very tapped into what it is I want to do with my life. And, being an old soul, have done this a few times. It's odd in my teenage years to have known that. And my family has always said, there's always something about you, Kay. You had something figured out that we just didn't yet. And so when I would ask them these questions, it was just a reconfirming thing for me, which made me know that for other clients and people, this would really open their eyes to things that they didn't see before.
This snapshot time needs to happen by way of reflection.
Yes.
We need to get back in our time machine and kind of go back to when we were kids, because we right now, on this day that you're listening right now, you are everything from the point in which you took your first breath out in this world to right now. All of it, the good, the bad, the face down moments, the moments of triumph, you're all those things and all those parts. So since you are all those things and since you are all those parts, let's reflect back.
Yeah.
And see what are the parts about myself that I even forgot? Mm-hmm. What are the parts of myself that I've left behind? And even, even before you ask relatives, remember for yourself, what did you love? What lit you up? What were you so excited about?
Yeah.
Because I think that gives us the whispers of paying attention to what is our purpose. Mm. What is it to live life on purpose, to be intentional about the way that we show up in the world? So similar to you, I can definitely tell you tons of stories from my childhood. But most particularly, my mom would always tell everybody, she's an old soul. She was born 40, mm-hmm. And yeah, leading the charge on different things. I mean, my poor little sister, I think I had let me take you guys on my entrepreneurial history. I had a lemonade stand, but it wasn't enough. I told you the lemonade stand story. Okay. So it's a good story. I'm going to share this story. Okay.
Yes, they need to hear it.
Very important story. But so my lemonade stand story, oh my God, it's I'm laughing just thinking about what I'm about to tell you guys. So it wasn't enough that there was going to be a lemonade stand. I wanted to really stick out in a crowded marketplace of lemonade stands.
There was one on every block.
I mean, there was none other in the entire street. But I was 6 or 7, and I just decided that we really need to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace. Yeah. So I decided that I was going to make mud with rocks and sticks and definitely dried leaves in there.
Of course.
And I was mixing it up, and I'm standing on the street with all the confidence in the world that of course you want to buy this. My neighbor, God bless him, he rolled up in a convertible. When you're 6, Like the fact that they took the top off a car is like psh, mind blown. And like definitely, he could have jumped out of the car with a cape. He gave me $5. $5 for a cup with mud and rocks and sticks. So of course, like I thought I had figured it out.
Yeah.
I sold no other lemonade that day. Did not matter because I got $5 for my rocks and sticks. But it just like goes to show you, as you look back on your younger self, right, the confidence that we had.
Yes.
We were just all about it. And think back, even though it's like being a parent and I'm witnessing Phoebe and she's 5 and like she says things with such conviction.
She knows what she wants.
She knows what she wants. She was singing Lizzo today. Lizzo, right? Like what? And I'm going to butcher it too, but like, why man great until you got to be great, right? She decided that it was like, she speaks some gibberish and she goes, until you got to take a pee break. I'm like, and she kept saying it. I was like, no, Phoebe's like, and I played the song for her and I was like, no, Phoebe's, I think it's like, why man great till you got to be great. I don't even know if I'm getting the lyrics right, but she looked at me dead in the face. I'm playing Lizzo and she's like, why I got to take a pee break? And I was like, okay, you're right.
Yeah, her lyrics are better.
Her lyrics are much better. But like, when you go back to that 5-year-old version of yourself before the world told you who to be or what you should think, or like you started adopting your mom's fears, your dad's attitude, or, you know, with what their beliefs were about their own journey, or what your teacher said, or when you started to compare yourself to others. I want to take you back in the time machine to that point. What sticks out to you?
I mean, and there's so many before even like moving into that moment where I was kind of like people think it's like this rock star moment that, you know, like, and I figured it out, right? And like the lights are flashing and the audience that has been watching you your whole, like cares so much about you is clapping, like, right? All these things. But prior to that, like you started speaking on, you know, before your parents and your teachers started to tell you, right? And this leads into like one of those moments that I now can look back and say like, that's what that feeling was when I had it, right? So, you know, when I went to college, I told my advisors, I told my professors, everyone, I wanted to be a motivational speaker and a certified life coach. First of all, I don't think any of them ever heard any of their students say that before, but this has always been my life.
You're in full connection, yeah.
And I've known I've wanted that. And, you know, I grew up listening to Les Brown. Like my dad would wake us up and say, it's time to get fortified. And Uncle Les was playing, right? Like this is what we listened to. There was no music. And
no Lizzo?
No. We were, not reinventing lyrics. I was reciting Uncle Les's, like, lesson points, right? So this is, like, ingrained in me. And so when I would go in and I would state, you know, what my goal was to my professors, like, this is what I'm here for. One of the responses I got was, you know, you have to have a story to be a motivational speaker, right? Right? And in that moment, I knew I had a story to share, but it's like they don't want you to fail. That's where that is coming from. So you want to have like compassion for those people, the ones, the teachers, the parents that try and like form you and mold you to, you know, what they think could work best. Because really when you come to this place of compassion for them, it's this understanding that they don't want to see you fail. But, you know, tune into our previous episode about surrender. Like, mistakes are going to happen. You have to surrender to what, you know, life has for you, right?
Part of the deal. You sign up to live.
Exactly.
You sign up for some mistakes. Yeah.
So, you know, I was constantly challenged with that. Like, and it made me question, well, is my story good enough? Like, are people going to want to hear, like, what I have to say? And here I am on a podcast and people are tuned in listening to what I have to say, right? Like, so full circle of like when you're in your purpose and when you commit to that and you have full conviction to sell mud and rocks or know that Lizzo's lyrics are wrong, right? Like, and you stick with that, like, that's like when your purpose is revealed to you. Right. That's when you get to that place of like, this is what I'm supposed to do, because you know, it's so deep down, like you get chills every time something comes up to confirm that, a piece of it.
Absolutely. I mean, even like I could take you back down memory lane and I was like probably 7 because I was allowed to go around the neighborhood with a little red wagon, dragging my poor sister along yet again. And I helped her. We made greeting cards. And we made greeting cards which again, I was going for the untapped market. So the greeting cards that we made were like, sorry you had a fight with your brother, or like, really wish you didn't break your leg. Or it was mostly like apology cards, like, sorry your cat died. I mean, we had
so much sympathy.
But I was like, okay, well, Hallmark's not getting specific enough.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I would like have her following me around with this little red wagon, and we would be like knocking on doors and peddling our wares. But we went up to those houses with like full conviction that we had something that they were going to be excited about in this little red wagon. And it's like you almost didn't know differently.
Right.
So I love what you're saying, because it goes to that point of like, how do we tap back into that inner knowing? How do we tap back into that self? Wait for this one. This was pretty good. What would your childlike self say about who you are today? Like, what opinion would they have about you? Like, did you do a good job? And like, we can go back to like, yeah, sure, 5-year-old self, 10-year-old self, like 15-year-old self. Like, what would they say about who you are right now? Are you living their big dreams? Like, are you living their biggest passions, their biggest ideas? You know, did you scare yourself somewhere along the way? Did you give up? Did you let go? Right? Or did you have experiences that, and this is no judgment, it's just like, let's just check in for a hot minute here. Like, did you have times when you had to pivot or to change, or you tried for it? Like, and also based on the experience you've had since you were a little kid, and the stories and the dreams and the hopes that you had as a little kid.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I also recall like every Christmas hoping that Cliff and the Big Red Dog would show up like as big as my house. Right. So there's stuff that was just not going to happen. But like the big dreams that you had, did you follow through with them? And what are you telling yourself now about the big ideas that you had in the past? You saying they're foolish? You saying that they're not for you? Are you saying someday? What are you saying? Did you already do them? Did you live them?
Right. And it's so interesting because, like, sit with that, guys. Like, what would the child version of you say to who you are right now? Right? And that version of you still exists. Past, present, future, it still exists. So what would that version of you say to who you are right now? And for me, you know, like I said, like, old soul here, like, had it figured out for some time. It was Dr. Seuss Day. Story time. It was Dr. Seuss Day. I was in 2nd grade, and the vice principal, we had this big assembly every year for Dr. Seuss Day, and students would get to read books, and like it was a reading race and all these things, and they'd give prizes out. And the vice principal came to the classroom and said to, I guess, one of the other students in the class. What grade were you
in at the time?
2nd grade.
2nd grade. Okay.
And I mean,
so this is like 8 years old.
Yes, my memory is very, very vivid, which is like I can remember outfits I was wearing from certain time periods of my life. It gets weird here. And really, like, so the vice principal came in and said, you know, we have this assembly. I was in the Montessori program. So I was like the guinea pig version for my school district. Like, I went through preschool, but I was the first year they ever did Montessori in my school. So the vice principal came into our class and said, we need one of the Montessori students to read this to introduce the assembly. So, and this assembly is in front of the entire school. It was kindergarten to, I think, kindergarten to 3rd grade that I was in school with. So a couple hundred kids. And one of the girls, the teacher suggested someone. She comes over and she says, no, she doesn't want it, because the vice principal said, here's the piece of paper. This is all you have to read just in front of the school. Like, introduce this assembly.
Sure.
Didn't want to do it. Scared. Like, and the universe said, here's your time, Cayla, right? Like, at the time, I had no idea.
Right.
And I stepped up and I said, I stepped up and I said, what's that? Can I do it? And she hands it to me, and she tells me having no idea, right, being completely led by the greater plan. So I said, what's that? Can I do it? And vice principal said, you're going to have to read this in front of the school. Here's, what you have to read on this little paper. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And I took the paper, and then, you line up to leave for the assembly, and, one by one, single file. Then they started doing that double line thing when I got to 4th grade. I didn't even know what was happening then. So yeah, 2nd grade, you know, single file, and Cayla, you go down early because you're reading something, so you have to be up on the stage. And, you know, this is like Broadway for me. Like, this is big time. Like, yeah, and I remember, I think I had like a red shirt on, black pants. Like, it's weird. I remember the details of this, and you don't realize until you're older, like, that this is going to be a moment that you'll never forget.
Right.
And couldn't tell you what I read about Dr. Seuss, but I read something about who he was and, you know, a little biography on him, and said, you know, welcome to the Dr. Seuss Day. In the moment of me reading that, my heart was beating out of my chest, like insane, but it wasn't, I was nervous, right? Like I didn't stutter my words. I knew what I was saying. I was reading the paper. You know, my palms are sweaty and my heart was beating out of my chest. And I just remember doing that and sitting in almost like this gratifying position. Like, that was like bliss. That was happiness. Like, that was what I wanted to do.
Right.
And when I got older and I saw other people speaking on stages and like holding a mic and just walking and having conversation.
Right.
I then began to ask, like, well, what are they doing? Like, what is their job? And then, you know, I'm turning 13, 14, and my dad starts playing Les Brown. So these things are being introduced to me. And when I found out that what I did on stage, you know, speaking in front of a couple hundred people is what I wanted to do. And I wanted to just talk about what I wanted to talk about, right? Like,
but of course.
Not a script. Like, I don't want to be an actor here. Like, I want to have real-time conversation with people. Like, and I found out that was like a motivational speaker. I was like, that's what I want to do. That's right. A title to the feeling that I had on stage, right? Like, it wasn't like, what job makes the most money? Oh, so that's what I'm going to be, right? Like, I had this feeling, I had whatever it was, I just didn't know what to call it.
Right, and I want to go to, like, that intensity of the moment of you being, right, 8 years old, you're on stage. One could say, like, oh, you know, you're just scared, but no, it sounds like, to me, that you were, like, in the embodiment of your purpose at that moment, so that it's, like, everything that you felt was from that place of full conviction.
Yes.
And when we're little, sometimes we can't put words to it, but, you know, when we can't put words to something, we know the feelings very, very well. So even as you're talking about recall, you're like, I can remember so much details. Yeah, because when we're little, we can remember these details because we create meaning around them.
Yes.
You know, so even as we're talking about today, like, you know, being in your purpose, what is your purpose? What is your reason for being in this world? And that's something that we talk about in our signature program, Own Your Power Mastery. Is, you know, one of the modules that we do, which I'm so proud of the program, and it actually comes right from the book, Own Your Power, is what is your reason for being in the world? And a lot of times, like you said, we can freeze in trying to answer that. You know, oh, hi, we're at a cocktail party. Oh, what do you do? What do you do? Where are you from? Where are you from? Like, where'd you go to school? Where'd you go to school? Right? It's like, we know those things. We know our script. We know our lines. But the truth is, like, we need that time to go with them. So looking at your reason for being, like, what lights you up? What would you do all day and every day for free? What do people compliment you for? What do people come to you for? What makes you feel useful, alive, and strong? Frankly, ask yourself, what makes you feel free?
Yeah. And knowing that can change. Like, right. Like, it's not a average story for me to have known what I wanted to do, had that feeling and experienced it in second grade, and, being in my 20s now and being able to, like, execute that still and still get that feeling when I go up on stage and reconfirm, like, yep, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Like, that doesn't have to be, there could be a day for anyone where they're like, this isn't for me anymore. Mm-hmm. And being able to accept that and it, tune right back into that inner knowing of, like, what feels good to me. Because we go through stages in our life where we shift in our identity, and we have to be, like, graceful in that, and we have to be compassionate towards ourselves in those time periods. Mm-hmm. You're never gonna have it all figured out.
Nope. And
to know what your purpose is, like, what you do with that knowing can change over time.
And how it shows up, too. Because the truth is, like, there are different seasons in your life, as there should be. Because through those different seasons, we learn more things about ourselves.
Yes.
So, while it feels like an intense question, what did Dr. Seuss say? Sometimes the questions are complicated, but the answers are
simple.
Quite simple. Right. Yeah. Sometimes those answers are simple. So if you were to step out of the feelings of overwhelm around this question and answer it, we'd love to hear from you. So definitely, I know you can check out the questions. We're going to post those in the show notes for you. And you can also hop in and be part of our community. Really excited about our community because that's what I've always believed. I can't tell you how many times that we've stood on stage and I say out loud, like, the reason I'm standing on stage is because I have a belief that we only grow in direct correlation to the depth of the questions that we ask ourselves. And if we're not asking ourselves any bit more than like chocolate or vanilla, ham or turkey, like, we're not growing. So I'm super stoked to share with you guys. We do weekly reflection questions, journal prompts, meditations, and this can come to you directly from text message. So it's super simple. And it's not a bunch of like spammy stuff because I like hate spammy stuff and like group text messages, like, get me out of there. It's like being, I don't know, it's like being held hostage. There's like a meme that says that. So keep it simple. So open up your phone, go to your messages. I'm just going to give you my phone number. And I want you to text me. And it's 732-487-3404. So 732-487-3404. Just text your like favorite emoji, right? Like whatever. It could be inappropriate. It could be appropriate. Who cares? But text me your emoji, text us your emoji. And then we will start to share with you our reflection questions. Because again, we only grow to the depths of the questions that we ask ourselves. And if we're not asking ourselves questions, like, we're not going to grow. And then yes, your life becomes Groundhog Day. So when someone comes up to you at a party and instead of asking you, what do you do for a living? They ask you, who are you or why are you here on this planet? It's likely one of us or any of our Mindrise coaches, right? But the truth is, like, you are so much more than what's on your business card, what's on your signature line of your email, like what your title is or the children that you've, put into this world. Like, you're so much more than just one definition. And since you are a multidimensional human being, like, we need you to look within and see, what rises up for you.
Yeah. And continue to ask yourself those questions and know, like, there is more to who you are than, what you do in your everyday activity, and change it up a little bit. Like, when you start asking, you're going to sit down and you'll get these reflection questions from us, and maybe you're sitting in front of your notebook now, kind of, taking notes on, what you would tell yourself, or the child version of you would say to who you are now, right? Like, now what? The question becomes. And, we can go into further conversation on executing these steps to tap more into your purpose.
Sure.
But I think that let's keep it simple. Like, how can we create small little hobbies and habits out of these things? Mm-hmm. And if something you loved to do as a kid was to draw, right? Like, tapping back into that, and take 5 minutes a day to like take out a sketch pad and draw something, right? Like, get creative and play with whatever that might be. And like, you've probably got some talent there that the world is missing out on, right? So tap back into what made you feel good and do small little things to implement that into your day. Like, doodle at your desk if you're working in a cubicle. You know what I mean? Like, make it a part of your life. Have intention behind honoring that version of you, because you don't want to disappoint them, just as you wouldn't want to disappoint a 5 or 10-year-old now. So continue to have those conversations with yourself, and know that you are so much more, like B said, than what's on your business card. We are conditioned so much by society that that's all that matters, and label and social status is what makes a difference. And then we go home and we go to sleep and we start to question, like, is this really what I want to be doing? And that's what this podcast is for, to help you think more into those questions. Like, we want to create a container for you to dive into that, because most of the time we go to work, we go home, and we're so tired we fall asleep as soon as we start thinking about these questions, and we wake up and do it all over again. So here is the space to take the time to ask those deeper questions, because more likely than not, it's not happening at any other point in the day.
Right. It's time to grow, because at the end of the day, A rising tide lifts all ships. Thanks for joining us, guys. Check in the next episode.